Hi, Destiny. It's your fellow Black Queen, Sophie, checking in real quick because I have notes for you, and I really hope to. Okay, this is how much I love you. I'm against the wire here. I wanted to do this a long time ago, but it's been really busy. Baby sick, so sorry. I'm looking a hot mess. We're just gonna run and gun it, okay? I just wanted to go through some points considering the questions that are on the table or potentially on the table for your debate on Saturday, which I will be in attendance at. In fact, I'm going to be helping the organizers to set up and stuff, and I think I'll be at the merch table. In talking to Travis, I asked him if there was going to be a Q&A, and he said that there wasn't going to be, which is fine, but I'm hoping that you ask Konstantin the question that I would have asked if there was a Q&A. Okay, so my husband took day, which is so nice of him. So yeah, let me kind of start over a little bit. I just wanted to really quickly put some points in your ear because you're too nice, you're too kind. These people are fucking monsters, and we have to hit them where it hurts, okay? So I feel like you get this flack for being so aggressive in this. You're not aggressive enough, baby, okay? Like, these people are literal demons. And so let's get into it. You watch Piers Morgan's interview with Nick Fuentes, and because you're so not racist, you're like a Vulcan. You're too intellectual. You're too fucking logical. You're literally watching this man dig a hole for himself about the whole racist thing. And I can see your wheels turning, and you're like, oh, well, I just don't understand. I don't get why he just won't give up the Jewish thing and give up the women thing, and then he'd be able to safely stay in his outs of, oh, he's just being, a troll. Why doesn't he just stop being a bigot? It's like, he can't. He can't, baby. He is a fucking demon. These people, it's not even that they don't see other races or groups of people or genders as human beings. I think they get to a point, especially with people like Peter Thiel, Elon Musk, they literally see themselves so far above being a human being. I think Nick Fuentes feels he's in this category, that him, white people, groypers, people who feel like him, are so advanced as a species that they are no longer even on the same level as a regular human person. So I think you have like your normal sort of racist white supremacists, and they have a hard time seeing black people or trans people as actual people. But then you have this whole other level, which I think Konstantin is on, where they think they're so fucking smart that they're above being actual fucking human beings. And so I think you have to kind of attack that morality issue. Like, look, first of all, you're a regular person. You take a shit just like any of us. You wake up every day. So one day you won't. So here's where we're gonna level set. Okay. So I wanted to actually read you the question I would have asked if there was going to be like a live Q&A at the event. Maybe you can take this question and maybe not ask it of Konstantin, but just think about the implications of what I'm saying. So let me read this to you. Public figures across the West have openly embraced white nationalist rhetoric and retained or even grown their audiences. The social cost of racial politics clearly isn't what it used to be. On your podcast, Trigonometry, you argue for strict assimilation, differential treatment of immigrants based on cultural compatibility, and deterrence policies that knowingly produce suffering as a strategy. You reject the label racist. So my question is this. If your framework requires ranking cultures, restricting rights based on origin, and accepting human suffering as a tool of state policy, What exactly is your definition of racism, and why does your worldview not meet it? Okay. So I just genuinely want him to explain how he isn't racist. What do you think racism is that you don't fit into this category? Or white supremacy, or xenophobia, or bigotry? I mean, it's absolutely insane. So I like the video editor in me is really kicking myself. I've been so busy. My baby's been sick, as you can see from the little clip I'll show that, I'm not lying. I would have put more attention to this if I could. I've pulled clips and shit that I was going to put in here and really try to link stuff to the questions on the table. I just don't have time for that. I really hope you at least get a chance to see some of this, because I do feel like some of these points are outside of what you normally do in your debates, but I think they're so helpful and so necessary, because right now I've seen you, you're doing the research as always. You're on stream doing the searches into, the differences between American and European immigration and the history of it and the laws and the differences. Doing that is going into this playing on his battlefield. I think that you need to pull him into your battlefield, because you are so far above him on the moral high ground that I think that, if you want to take the high ground, and wipe his ass, like, I think this is how you do it. So this is why I'm just trying to get you something. The reason I'm so serious about this is because at the end of the day, literally everything he's doing, everything he's saying, everything he is from this white supremacist lens. I know that he's like Russian and he's an immigrant and he has all these excuses as to why, as an immigrant, he's not like other immigrants, and he has the authority to speak on this because he's an immigrant too, and blah blah blah. But it's bullshit. He's literally coming from this white supremacist lens, and the reason it's so important to attack that is because he wasn't reasoned into that. He didn't sit down one day and say, you know what, white people have this genetic quality that does set us apart from, or we actually do have a history of doing this good thing, so we are above everybody else. We are better than other races. Wow. That never happened. There was no logical assessment of whatever, he needed to land in a place of pure fucking hatred. So the fact that you're going into this logically is already a mistake. Like, it's good to know the facts, it's good to know the stats, it's good to know all of that, but like, you can't reason somebody out of an argument they never reasoned themselves into. And so I think that's the crux of really what I'm trying to say here. Let me try to go through some of the questions that are on the table for your event and just chat with you about them from my thoughts as a Black woman who knows what racism is and feels like and looks like. And I can tell you it's much more insidious than I think you're capable of understanding. And so I want to kind of link back to why all of his arguments that could potentially come up are really housed in this place of, bigotry with him. And why, again, as somebody who is so sweet, you sweet summer child, I want you to be able to open your eyes to it so that you can start to attack it on that moral high ground. I'm not a debate. In fact, I kick myself every day because my mother is a fucking high school debate teacher. She just retired. And so I feel like I missed out on actually picking her brain on all the fallacies and the bullshit and the philosophy of it all, but I never did. So this is just me coming from a position of, being a debater myself, having jumped into the fire with MAGA. I have fucking accounts on Rumble and Locals and True Social and fucking Gab. Oh my God. So like, I know these people. I've had so many discussions with these people. Because Konstantin is probably more on that tier 2, tier 1 cusp, it's going to be a little bit more tricky because he's not as dumb as you're, just walking around believing this because that's what Mammy and Mama taught them, versus somebody who's studied and who's debated at Oxford and who's really been in this game for long enough to know better, if you will. So, again, saying all that to say, this is why I think we need to take a little bit more of a different approach than trying to fight him on the intellectual space, because part of him is a believer, part of him is tier two. Where I think if you, again, bring him out of this intellectual zone of, like he's so far above this that he's just saying it to say it, and really attack the fact that he really believes this shit, pull him into your moral high ground. And again, because you're not even on this tier system of racism, I think you have a unique position to be able to do so. So just let's move forward. The first question that you are going to be talking with him about, according to the event description or whatever, I know it says these are subject to change. So, I'm just going to talk about it from, my lens. And again, I'm just going to talk. So, like, I hope you can hear me. I hope you understand what I'm saying. I wish I had time to do fucking visuals and shit, but like, okay, here we go. So the first question is, can national identity survive open immigration? So my first thoughts when I hear this are fucking, what the fuck is open immigration? I think that's already setting up this false binary where it's like, oh, let's assume that we have open borders and we're just letting millions of people in unchecked. Can national identity survive this? So I think that's almost like, when you get pulled over and the cops like, do you know how fast you were going? No matter what you say, it's kind of, assuming the point. You're in like this false dilemma where if you say, no, I don't know how fast I was going, they are like, oh, well, let me tell you, you were speeding. And if you say, yes, I know how fast I was going, then, you're fucked because you clearly knew that you were speeding. So it's kind of that same situation where when I hear, can national identity survive open immigration? It's like, well, yes, it can survive open immigration. So we're assuming that we're fucking living in a state in America or Europe of open immigration. Like, we're just letting everybody in. That's not how it works. That's not the case. And it never has been. And then if you say, no, national identity can't survive, which is probably Konstantin's point, again, you're assuming the point. So I would absolutely harp on this question's framing before I jump into anything and say, well, what do you mean by open immigration? Are you assuming that we're just letting people in? Blah, blah, blah. I've heard you kind of debate that before. I think that you're covered there. But then when you want to get into the whole national identity thing, I think this is another moment where you can absolutely press him on that moral high ground, because he has very vociferously said that the issue he takes with all these people coming in is that England won't even look like England anymore. Europe won't even look like Europe anymore. So it's really more about the brown people coming that he's concerned about, the Muslims coming that he's concerned about. He's even asked someone, well, what would you say if we had Sharia law? Like, they all come in here and vote in Sharia law. Like, I think there's two things you could do when it comes to this question. I think you can press him on specifics. So if he tries to throw that at you, oh, well, what do you really want America to be under Sharia law? Like, okay, well, how would that work? How does that work? All these people come in, they become naturalized citizens properly so that they're able to vote. Enough of them do this and then are able to vote in candidates who are Muslim, who then introduce legislation that somehow gets a majority in the House and then the Senate, and then the president signs Sharia law into, codification. Like, what the fuck? Like, really ask him how he expects that to actually come about. I think, of course, when we realize how ridiculous that is, maybe that can crumble that argument a little bit. But then also, okay, what if it did? What if it did? What if the national identity of a country is slowly shaped and morphed by the new people that come here. What the fuck is wrong with that? What is wrong with that? Like, what's the real issue? He literally can only say, oh, I don't like it. I don't want to see, I want to see my grandkids look like me. I want to see the country stay the same with its traditions and its food. And it's like, well, okay, well, what's the problem with that? So you literally want to deny people asylum. You want to deny people a chance to experience, the wonders and freedoms of the West. People who may be in war-torn countries, people who may be experiencing an inability to have those same freedoms in their own countries, or they might be existing in a level of famine or poverty that needs addressing from an asylum lens. Who the fuck knows? But to come over to a place from a place that you were raised and is your home, it takes a lot of pressures for them to even want to come in the first place. So you're denying somebody's suffering or challenges or their lack of access to freedoms because you don't like it. Your comfort is somehow more important than these people's fucking survival. That's where the quandary kind of comes into me. And again, I feel like if that's what the majority becomes, if somehow you let in more people who not only become at least 51% of your fucking population, but all of them somehow get naturalized, and then they want to fucking change the fundamental infrastructure of your country. Isn't that fucking democracy? Isn't that what the fuck you want? Aren't you trying to keep the republic in place where people can elect the people that they want in office to make the laws that fit the majority of them? I mean, I feel like that's good, right? So that's what we want. It just seems ridiculous to me that national identity is even a fucking thing. Basically, that's your comfort level that you want to maintain over the fact that there's these people who need to come here for a certain reason or want to come here. Like, I'm an immigrant to the United Kingdom. My husband is an immigrant to America. So I've literally experienced the immigration process on both ends. And so I can tell you it's not easy. I've never had to do the asylum thing, thank goodness. But I can't imagine that, the pressures that would force somebody to seek asylum here or come over on a boat or whatever the fuck aren't dire. And then also, if you're coming into a country seeking asylum, whether it's America or somewhere in Europe, isn't that legal? Like, isn't that a framework that exists to bring people into a country? So I feel like whenever I hear this term illegal immigrant, what the fuck does that even mean? Because yeah, in America, you might have people come in across the fucking border, between those stupid ass slatted gates that Trump put up. But, or the slatted fence, excuse me, that Trump put up. But like, okay, that's few and far between. The real issue is people seeking asylum in America. And I'd imagine that if you come over on a boat to France or whatever the fuck, that the first thing you're seeking is fucking asylum. So that's why they try to like get them in the water so they don't touch land and suddenly have to be granted, asylum. So it's kind of like, okay, well, they're how is that illegal? That's the fucking process. That's the legal fucking process that they're, engaging in. Yeah, I feel like you could go into the data of it and show that most immigrants who do come over actually do assimilate almost fully by like second generation. I think most second generation Muslims are already drinking and eating pork by again by the time they have kids. That's what their kids are doing. So it's kind of stupid to even address this because foreigners do assimilate. to the degree that it's possible to assimilate. And maybe let me kind of share some thoughts on that term, assimilation. Now, I understand that it means something different when somebody like Konstantin says that I want them to assimilate. I want them to learn our language. I want them to respect our values. Okay. But like, why? Like, what does that look like? In America, we didn't have an official language until 2025 when Trump made it English. And Europe still, or England anyway, United Kingdom still does not have an official language. So there's not like a legally binding thing that says you have to speak English in these countries, or there is in America now, but there wasn't before, before Trump. And honestly, that was even in America, that was done by EO. So very next president that comes about, if that happens, can just turn that spigot off and suddenly we're, we can speak anything we fucking want here. So, okay, so you're not, you don't have to. You don't have to speak English when you come over here. Most people who come over here do speak English. And I'm saying here in the UK, it's where I live. So it's kind of weird to me that that's the whole thing. They want you to assimilate. But okay, so I get that that's the argument. But when I hear assimilate as a Black person, you can really only be three things in America when it comes to Black and white relations. You can be racist. You can be like, fuck Black people. They're subhuman. They're not people. Fuck you. You can be anti-racist. You can actively go against institutional racism and challenge your own and other people's implicit biases. You can take a hand in addressing and preventing racism within your sphere when you see it, when you're able. But then there's a third category of things you can be on this spectrum of racism, and that's assimilationist. So these are people who are racist. They're still on that side of the spectrum, but they don't feel like they're racist because they're basically saying, well, Black people can absolutely, they can absolutely be part of our society, and I'll absolutely see them as a human being and respect them and totally be cool with Black people if they only just talked without the AAVE or whatever the fuck, or if they stopped using homie and all the slang, and if they weren't in gangs, and if they weren't lazy, and if they got a job and weren't on welfare, they stopped getting the food stamps, if they'd only just assimilate, if they'd only just be more like us, then I would respect Black people. So just when I hear assimilation, that's what I think of. You're still racist. You're just calling it something different. So I feel like that's one of the things that you might even want to map onto his use of that word, because Konstantin says it all the time. If they just assimilated, if they just came over here and assimilated, you can really lift that up. Like, okay, well, assimilated in America means like you're basically wanting people to shed their culture, shed their way of speaking, shed their own ideas of what freedom looks like, shed their religion. You're asking them to basically shed their culture in order to espouse yours. That's fucking racist. So I feel like there's a one-to-one that you could probably draw there. I've heard him really challenge someone when they try to say, oh, well, racism is, a person experiencing racism and intrinsically understanding that it's racism. It's only for a person who experiences racism to say that they have been treated in a bigoted manner, and so I've heard him take that and say, oh, well, you saying this to me feels racist, so now you're racist, and because I feel that way, I'm just gonna, that's what it is, it's the facts, it's the truth. because I feel that way. So I feel like there's a couple of things when it comes to him pushing back so hard on the label of racist, and then also throwing it back at people all the time. Well, for you to even say that is racist. I've heard him fucking do that. It makes no sense to me. But you can literally say, okay, well, are you in a marginalized group? Are you fucking black? Are you Muslim? Like, what? You know, who are you to try and say that somebody isn't or doesn't experience racism when there's no fucking way that you could say that or experience that or live in their or live in their shoes enough to commiserate with that feeling. So to sully that is one thing, but also to act like you don't understand what someone means when they say this thing is racist is a huge dismissal of the other person's intellect. And so it's like, okay, well, if you want to argue with me and play stupid and act like I'm stupid, then why are we even here? Why are we even on the same stage having a debate if you don't respect my intellectual capability enough to understand what I'm trying to convey here? Like, I feel, and you could say, I feel like I'm a good enough communicator that you understand what I'm saying. So if you want to pull it into this semantic Jordan Peterson like argument, then you go right ahead. But, you know, I'm going to move forward as though you understand what I'm saying as a human being, as a person who has a brain. The final thing I want to get at with the whole immigration thing, whenever you're being called a racist and your hackles go up and you're like, I'm not racist. And for you to call me racist just for being concerned about what's going to happen to white people if so many marginalized groups come over here, you're racist. You're the one so obsessed with race. That's another instance where maybe you can again do that sort of paralleling, like to show, okay, so because I'm calling you a racist, which you don't have to explicitly say at any point, but if for you to be called a racist means that you're just as victimized as someone who is experiencing racism. Is that what you're saying? Like, is that what you're getting at here? Like, and I just think the absurdity of that kind of stands on its own. Again, kind of going back to my question that I would have asked him if there was a Q&A. Like, what's wrong with being a racist? Me calling you racist is such a pejorative and it's such a damaging, harmful thing to experience. Why is that? Like, what's wrong with being a racist? Like, if you can explain to me where your vitriol comes up at being called this, then maybe we can address the worldview that you espouse. So you don't like being called racist because a racist is someone who feels like entire groups of people are beneath them, but you want to only bring a certain caliber of immigrant over, or you're only okay with a certain hierarchy of culture coming over. Like, is that not putting some people above and below other people? So if you don't like that aspect of racism and you're espousing something that fits that aspect of racism, let's talk about it. Maybe that's what we help you to walk back a little bit so that you're not racist, because to feel that way is by your own definition racist, and you don't like being a racist. So let's work on how you can change, how you can better understand that, you know, every culture is rich and valuable and has pros and cons. It can only add to the diversity and beauty of a country, especially a country that went out and colonized all these places and and tried its best to pick and pull from all these different cultures around the world. In the first place, a country whose national fucking dish is an Indian curry, a country that's like beyond the tossed salad and is a real melting pot with Turkish shops and friggin' Ethiopian restaurants and all kind of amazing, cool, you know, representations of culture. Yeah, okay. Let's see how that works out for you. Here's where I think you can actually again pull him off of his field of choice into your theater of war, if you will. He's going to say, oh, net zero is the worst thing that wokies ever did to England and to Britain because net zero is this horrible, horrible thing, and it's making us spend all this money, and we're shooting ourselves in the foot, and for what? And for what? We're only affecting 1% of the global climate change efforts. Blah 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 blah. Okay, that is all the biggest fucking red herring I've ever heard in my fucking life. When people think fucking wokeism, who the fuck is thinking of Greta Thunberg? Like, everybody who hears wokeism in the West anyway, definitely in America, but I know living here that that's also a UK thing. When you hear woke, you think, hi, baby. What's up? And you have a little cool stickers.
This one's from lunch for eating like half of my lunch. Chicken.
Oh, that's pretty good. That's a nice little order of operations.
Isn't that so cute? Oh my god.
Nobody cares about the net zero piece. And honestly, it's him even phrasing that as a issue is kind of dumb because his entire argument is that if Britain's only contributing to 1% of the global climate crisis, then even if we did get to net zero, we're only impacting the global crisis by 1%. We're just a drop in the bucket. We're not doing anything. It doesn't matter. So why interrupt our industry to try and save the planet when we'd only be hitting 1% of it? And it's kind of like, okay, you're dismissing the fact that the surface area of England is probably less than 1% of the entire world. So yes, poorer countries contribute more to carbon emissions and whatnot. But at the same time, the carbon emissions that occur in England affect England. It's not like that's traveling all the way over to India, and that's what's causing an issue for British people, or that the things that China is doing are suddenly creating smog over in London. Like, it's just ridiculous to assume that you're not going to impact your own country by improving your fossil fuel reduction. And then also it kind of goes back to that argument that he makes of immigrant crime being an issue, because okay, you advocate, yes, you advocate for stopping all immigration in order to stop the tiny percentage of crimes that are coming from the immigrant community, but you want us to stop focusing on the tiny amount of impact Britain is having in the larger climate conversation. Like, it's just, it doesn't make sense. So that's something where you can kind of attack that, both of his arguments at one time for being illogical, if we want to stay in the logic vein of things. It's not about net zero. He is very, anti DEI, and I think he understands though that especially in Europe or in the UK, to be a racist actually has more ramifications than it does clearly in America. So he can't really go out on a limb and just claim that label like he should. Okay. The kids are asleep. I can finally sort of wrap this up, and I am so tired. I was tired then, I'm tired now. So please forgive me for getting a little rambly at points, but I feel like I can be a little bit more concise. I don't know, I got a second wind. In England, like they don't take no shit over here. They don't take no. Gator don't play no shit. Gator ain't never been about no shit. And that's really how they are. Like you cannot be racist here. Like it's beautiful. Like you see it on all, they have billboards and signs, and whenever it seems to spring up with like football matches and stuff, like they nip that shit in the bud. When I first got over here a few years ago, I followed this court case that happened where some random dude on Twitter wrote about a football player, something about him being a baboon. And like every day there was like a BBC news report about, oh, he's been brought to trial today. And then, his lawyers or his solicitors are trying to say that it was a keyboard mistype. It was an autocorrect. He wasn't trying to say baboon. He was trying to say buffoon. And then it was like the next day, look, the judge didn't believe this and they threw the book at him, basically. So this dude actually got like, it wasn't much, but like a few days of like jail time. Yeah, I get why Konstantin has to hide behind these fake like punching bags, essentially. So he'll attack net zero and try to act like that's where his real issue with wokeness lies, when we all know that's bullshit. He'll just go so hard about why he's not a racist and how he's an immigrant too, and he doesn't think his son is British. If I wouldn't treat my son this way, like he just throws all these things out, these smoke and mirrors, to try to obfuscate from the fact that he's a fucking racist. So long and short about all of this is that's where you get him. You don't get him by proving the facts are in your favor. They are. I mean, statistically, immigrants don't cause nearly as much crime as white people do. It's just not that economically impactful, as they try to make it out to be. Like it's literally, the odds are in your favor, but where I think you really need to, again, play the playground, the battlefield is really more so in this morality arena. The real fear here, and the same is true for white supremacists and racists in America, the real fear is that they have treated marginalized groups, black people, immigrants, brown people, so horribly for so long that they just cannot fucking fathom that when they become the minority, that they won't be treated in a similar fashion. Again, they just cannot fucking fathom that black people and immigrants aren't over here like, yeah, when we get in power, we gon' fuck them up. It's like, I genuinely, like, personally, and I'm sure I can speak for all black people in this manner, or in this matter, excuse me. We don't think about white people. We don't fucking give a shit about white people. Like, we don't give a fuck. I can't imagine other immigrants don't feel the same way. We are not thinking about you. You're not rattling around in our heads. We would love to just be fucking left alone. So if we did somehow become the majority, like, it's just not in us to suddenly be like, ha ha, now we're going to make you the slaves. It's like, no, nobody fucking thinks that way. But the fact that that's the fucking default for these kinds of white people, that's where it's just sad. And it kind of speaks to I guess, another sort of undercurrent of all this, and that is zero-sum thinking. And so I read just an amazing book called The Sum of Us. And it really gets into that about the zero-sum thinking in America, like how when public pools were forced to be integrated, instead of fucking letting little black kids come into the public pools, they would fucking put bleach in the pools and acid in the fucking pools while black kids were in the fucking pools. And then it got to a point where they just fucking put concrete in them. They fucking filled them with concrete rather than have integrated pools. So there's just this pervasive thought in, white supremacists and bigots and racists that if you give something to someone, whether it be a right, whether it be empathy, whether it be, reparations, you're taking that from me. Saying all this to say that those are the two big, I guess, undercurrents of racism that are replete throughout really everything that Konstantin espouses. The zero sum thinking and the idea that there's going to be this recompense. Like they're so scared of they're getting their comeuppance. I definitely feel like the winning strategy here is just to keep him away from targeting the Mott and Bailey of net zero, because that's just not what people think of when we talk about being woke. And I think you can also, again, extrapolate that argument of net zero not being important because we only would impact like 1% of the global climate crisis if we were to reach net zero. Extrapolate that out to other forms of wokeism that are more akin to what you think of when you think of being woke. So DEI, trans issues, women's rights, I suppose. Like these are all things that, impact these tiny, tiny populations in the scheme of the larger, white or European or British or American majority, essentially. So the overarching theme is really pulling him into this juxtaposition against his comfort versus someone else's freedom. Even if you look at the trans issue, that is really at the end of the day boiling down to a comfort issue. Oh, I don't want to see them in the bathroom, I don't want my daughter to be around. Like whatever the fuck. That's your comfort. That's your ick against the fact that, there are real ramifications with suicidality and, just a person literally not being able to live freely, So I think that's a real issue when it comes to, again, juxtaposing Konstantin's comfort over someone else's fucking life. So that can apply to the immigration matter, that can apply to racism, that can apply to, again, trans, that can apply to fucking net zero. You can't put the genie back in the bottle, you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. When it comes to net zero, one of his arguments is that, we're trying to spend all this money to retrofit our industries and to increase all these regulations and all this, just so we could shoot ourselves in the foot and give all our business to China. And it's kind of like, okay, well, the reality of it is, sweetheart, the more that we fall behind on green energy, the more China is going to step in and become the place you go for the best solar and wind technologies and whatever else, battery technologies. All the new markets that exist, the new jobs that exist are going to go to China if we do not keep up with the flow, because this is literally where we're moving as a global collective. So his argument that we have our comfort now, because again, it's all about comfort, that we stay comfortable now and keep our fuel prices as low as we can now, just so that we can fall behind later, lose jobs later, have to keep paying for fossil fuels because we have not kept up with, expanding our electrical vehicle networks and battery technology and things like that. So it's one of those things where, again, he's going to end up shooting himself in the foot advocating for things that keep you comfortable now, but have you lose out in the long run. You can get him to choose a side when it comes to liberalism, So, a question that might be valuable to ask: do you believe that democracy is just majority rule, or is it majority rule constrained by liberal institutions? And so we know that if he's like, oh, it's just majority rule, that can affirm a lot for us. We know right away that, yeah, okay, he genuinely does have this fear that if white people lose the majority, that they will face consequences or be treated in the same manner that they treat, our current marginalized and minority populations. But he most likely won't say that. It seems like too simple answer. And the correct answer really is that yes, we live in a democracy that is based on majority rule, that is tempered by liberal institutions. And so then I feel like that's where we can look at how Trump is eroding these liberal institutions of the guardrails that are supposed to exist within our Constitution, the free media, the free press, restricting the way that the judicial system works, weaponizing the DOJ. Like, there's so many things that we can lift up as to how him attacking the very essence of what democracy really is, again, majority rule with those caveats or with those guardrails put in place, and he's attacking those guardrails, that can be a really valuable way to, again, just open up the conversation into how Trump is being more or less fascist. I've heard Konstantin have an argument about Trump. He's very pro Trump. He'll try to qualify it because, again, he could never fucking own up to his fucking beliefs, really. So there was, I think, Question Time, I believe. There was a Question Time episode that he was recently on, and Konstantin went on this whole rant about, the only reason European leaders are upset about Trump is because he got up in front of all of Europe's top people, and although he did it in a very crass fashion, he lacked tact. He still told the truth. He said we need to be more self-reliant. We need to make sure we're getting our own energy, and we're not worrying about trying to send all of our manufacturing outside of England. We need to do more for ourselves. We need to pay for our military. We need to contribute more. Blah 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 blah. So basically, he's a Trump dick suck. The issue is going to be you're not going to really be able to pin him down because he's not going to be able to just flat out say, yes, I support Trump. He's always going to have these qualifiers. I think question 3, you kind of got on lock from what I've seen with your other debates and things. I loved your debate with Dinesh D'Souza and how you kind of cornered him on some of the Trump stuff. So I think, again, the only real thing to fear with question 3 with Konstantin is that he's just going to weasel his way out of owning up to actually, being a Trump supporter and being happy with his policies and happy with what he's doing. I bet he gets fucking hard looking at how the immigration and ICE efforts are going in America, and just wishes that was the case in England and Britain. Enjoy the moral high ground. Okay, I think I'm going to stop here. I really, really hope this has been helpful. I'm just so tired. I'm so sorry. I'm not at my best. And I really wish I'd had more time to really devote to making this much more thorough, much more, concise. So again, forgive my ramblings. But ultimately, the through line throughout all of this, I think, is just challenging his discomfort as this moral imperative suddenly. Like, just because he's uncomfortable, suddenly the whole country has to be, against whole swaths of people. I think, again, just understanding intrinsically that he is a fucking racist, he's a bigot, and you know, not calling him out in a pejorative sense, but just really trying to understand that that's the through line with every single thing that he believes, and that he can't really own it. Like I wish he would, I like Nick Fuentes, but you just can't do that in the UK. So I think it's almost dangerous for him to admit these things. But the dog whistles and the fucking straw men and shit that he throws up in order to get away with it, they just they don't work. He's in this rank of people who are so racist, like Elon Musk, right? Throwing up the fucking Heil Hitler or whatever. Like we know, we know he's a fucking Nazi. We know this, but we didn't need that hand gesture to know that he was a fucking Nazi. I mean, as much as he supports the AFK and backs Trump and all the money that he put into backing different people in different races in America and abroad, the speech that he gave to in France and in Germany and in Italy, I think he's very clearly demonstrated that he's a fucking Nazi. And so we didn't really need that to prove it. And so I feel like that this is where we are with Konstantin. So he can say all day, oh, I'm not racist. And it's not racist to ask these questions. It's not racist to be concerned. Yes, the fuck it is. You're a fucking racist. And so I think, again, we know this because of all the rhetoric that you've shared and espoused and pushed, and how you've talked about things in the past, and the type of guests that you have on, but guests who you're amenable to, who you're kind to, who you commiserate with, versus the ones that you actually have tension and friction with. So we don't need any one thing in this debate or otherwise to be a smoking gun to prove once and for all that he's a fucking racist, because we know, especially the people who are susceptible to it, we fucking know. So I feel like, it's kind of like the whole Trump thing. Like the emperor is fully naked and we fucking know it. And so it's just kind of one of those things where I hope that by the time you guys part ways, everybody who wanted to sit in that audience and act like Konstantin or Donald Trump is wearing the finest of tailored clothing really just understands that we fucking know he's butt ass naked up here. The fact that you expect us to fall for the fiction as well, we're not gonna play that game anymore. And so I hope that's where, at the very least, things land, is we draw our line in the sand. Like we see who you are and we don't like it. We're not here for illiberalism. We're not here for racism, and we're not going to entertain it anymore. So either, again, if you don't like being called racist so much that you're so victimized whenever you feel like you're being cornered about your belief system, then change your fucking belief system. And again, I know that's easier said than done, especially for somebody whose entire livelihood is based on that. So again, it's probably not even really for Konstantin, none of this. It's for those audience members, for his followers, hopefully, who can be saved. So hopefully you'll save some lives tomorrow. I am so excited to come. I really do hope I get to meet you and just say hello. And thank you so much for everything that you do. I don't know if you hear it often, but you're such a valuable asset in this fight for just truth and honesty and civility and humanity. And I just hope you know that it doesn't go unnoticed. You're absolutely appreciated. And that's why we gonna stand with Destiny, okay? So we'll see you on Saturday. Bye.